Okay, got this updated version. Okay.
Oh, Lord, I made it.
Yes, you did.
I just got outside.
Oh,
My Annie.
hmm.
Trying to get some.
Oh, tell me about it.
I said, I'm going to get here before 6 o'clock. I made it.
Okay, welcome to my world.
I made it. 4-6.
Yeah.
Y'all give me a Roberts book? I already got one. He already gave me a Roberts
This is an
book.
updated version, I guess.
No, I just got one from them last year. This is
Same
the
one?
same book.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I am deaf.
I always got a different color pen. Why is that?
You're in
I've been
Miami?
noticing that. I always get the different color pen. Everybody's pen be the same color
When you
but
come
mine.
from Miami, you
Why
want
is
to
that?
Actually don't have one.
Mine always different. I've been noticing for a
You got
while.
two.
No, mine always be different.
You want to take the different one?
I'm gonna give you that one. I like being different.
Okay, alrighty. Well, we do have a quorum, so you take a minute?
No, I'm just gonna turn this phone off.
Okay,
I'm ready to roll.
We're ready whenever you are.
okay.
I'm just one of them old people that pay attention to everything. My old folks watch everything. I'm one of them
Oh, there you go.
people.
Okay.
All right, I'm here.
Good.
Whew, okay.
Alrighty, so if we're set and ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. At this time, we're going to call the Town of Magonia Park, excuse me, Budget Workshop of July 23rd, 2024 into session. Roll call, please.
Mayor Alberry,
Here.
Councilmember Davis Quince,
Here.
and Councilman McConnell.
Here.
Councilmember McConnell, sorry about that.
Thank you so much. And for the record, we do have a quorum. So at this time, of course, the purpose of it is for us to have a discussion on the fiscal year, the proposed fiscal year 2024-2025 proposed budget. So with that, we're going to turn it over to administration, specifically Town Manager Ken.
Mayor and council, thank you for your time this evening. I'll be brief and then I'll entertain your questions and comments. So what we took away from last week's meeting, there was a desire from council to get updated revenue numbers on the general fund, and we've accomplished that. We were also bringing back some questions that were left unanswered from last week, so we'll kind of review those as well. So before we get into the numbers, I'll ask a few questions and then, I guess rhetorical, but as we get into the different spreadsheets, you know, we can address these. So first question, we've talked a little bit in our meetings, our workshops about utility rates, and we've had some different variations to that. So I think what it's coming down to is me asking council what the comfort level is for any increase in rates. And the caveat to that is that with the increase in expenses all the way around, and that's aside from any substantial increase in rates that we receive, but just the day-to-day expenses are always going up. So just kind of want to gauge your comfort level on that, and we can talk through some scenarios if you like. Other question is, second question is, do we want to keep, we have some money currently listed or proposed in the utility budget for litigation attorney, and that's $50,000. As we go through this, kind of like to know everyone's opinion on that, and if we were to leave that in, reduce it, add to it, or just what your thoughts are. And the final question that I have before we get into this is, do we want to retain the services of our lobbyist? So with that, we can look at the spreadsheets, and we'll start, if it's okay with everyone, and stop me when you have any questions. We'll look at the utility fund, and not a lot has changed since last week. We've pretty much left everything intact. We did tweak some numbers a little bit. I'll start with item number 3. Meter fees, we reduced that a little bit because we feel like most of the meter fees are going to be incorporated into application and recordings. So we don't see item 3 as a large venture coming up for this year. This year, it has been somewhat. We budgeted $15,000. We're at about 9,500. We don't see that being the case going forward. Okay? And that's on your revenue. That's about the only changes that we've made. We've left the revenue for water, sewer, and fire line alone from last week. We have not tweaked any number in expenditures, and that's kind of where we're at. Some of the highlights are obviously under the sewer department, sewage disposal. That's going to be an increase even if the rates are the same because of the increase in accounts. So that will go up, as will the revenue for that. And really, that's the biggest highlight. We do have some major projects coming in. The septic to sewer project, our utility engineer has promised that we'll have those bid documents for the clerk and for the attorney to review any day. So that's going to begin pretty soon and certainly is going to extend into the new fiscal year. We also have projects that we're looking at in the water department for, the ground storage tank that we've been talking about, obviously the ladder for the elevated tank, and we're still hoping that we get some money from the federal government that will allow us to implement some improvements at the water plant based on David's master plan that he presented earlier in the year. Other than that, I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have. To date, we are showing a little bit of a deficit in this budget, so we still need to do some tweaking from revenue to expenditures. The revenue is a little bit shorter than the expenditures. As as we move forward and we verify some of these numbers, especially in salaries, some of that could go up or down. Once again, you've heard this repeatedly. We've increased the money for all insurance line items by 25%, even though we don't know that to be the case, but we're pretty certain of 15 to 20%. I'd almost bet on it. So with that, I'll answer any questions or take your comments.
Okay. Any questions or comments on the utility budget? Okay, alrighty. Let's just see that. Now, just a question for clarification. I noticed that when we're going through it, some lines still don't have any dollars populated. For instance, if we were looking at item 3 and 4, 4 and 5, for instance, that's because nothing has come in at this point, and we don't have the exact numbers.
No, that's correct. Nothing has come in.
Okay, for those items. Okay.
I guess in the utility fund, there's an outside chance some of this could be miscoded, but this is primarily Alexi's work, so I'm pretty confident in it.
Okay, thanks so much. Let the record reflect that Vice Mayor Johnson has joined the dais. Okay, so with that. And last week, you explained the transfer account. I don't have my notes with me, so just again, I'll make some notes on this. And that's line 16 on the utility budget.
Certainly. Mayor, the transfer account, line 16 under revenue, what that is, that's the money being transferred from the general fund to the utility fund. When we get grants, especially from the state, they will come into the general fund, and this is just showing a transfer from the general fund to the utility fund. And these projects specifically are for the water projects that we talked about and for the septic to sewer project. So that's anticipated $2.5 million. So the money that's come in is the ARPA funding, just a little bit over $1 million that's come in. We haven't transferred any of that money yet. And we also will have, on a reimbursable grant, the septic to sewer. So that's where the transfer will come in.
Thanks, appreciate it. And just as we're going through it, there was an underpayment amount or collected amount or line 8 for sewer. Thus far, if we were to take a look at it, I guess we're running at about the right percentage for it because we still have 3 months to go.
Yes, sir. I think we're right on target for that. And these numbers are through the end of June, not the end of July, so we're still about a month off on this.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions or comments on the utility fund? Yes, while the other council members are thinking and going through, let's take a look at line 37. This is maintenance, repairs and maintenance. Okay, so we actually had an expenditure amount thus far this fiscal year of 135,499, and we exceeded the budget for that, and we're anticipating only 43 for the next year. Now, the explanation for that is that because we won't be having blah, dot, 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 dot.
Yes, sir. We're anticipating that we're not going to have a major event like we had this year in April. And this money, the 135,499, that represents the majority of what we had to spend out.
Okay. Now, specifically, that was for the pipe situation? This, pipe
Yes, sir.
sewer
For
situation?
the sewer malfunction that was ultimately discovered to be caused by a busted water main.
And so this 43,000 is sort of in line with what we've done previously. See, we have 35. And of course, if we were able to do a look back in terms of what the actual expenditures were, we have not exceeded the 35. And this is just an educated guess at this point because we don't have the hard numbers for the previous years.
Yes, sir. I would say that the 35 were well under that, aside from the one event. And, you know, there was a concern about that, so we did increase that to 43. But the 35 is pretty safe for this current year,
Okay.
minus that event.
Okay. And let's see if there's anything else that jumped out. And for the other members, please, if you have any questions or something, just let me know. We'll take your questions and comments. Okay. Line 46, still utility, health insurance.
Yes, sir.
Now, the 87.5, that we budgeted 70,000 last year. And so this 87.5 represents a 25%
Correct.
anticipated
Should be.
increase.
Yes, sir. And we still have to verify all of these numbers, especially when it comes to salaries, benefits, and insurances, but that is an attempt to represent 25%.
Just for the
Go ahead.
record, when you're looking at the utility plants, salaries or anything to do with payroll, when employees that are working in the utility plant are paid, they're paid out of the general fund. And there's a payroll clearing account. So when the utility fund budget normally would reflect properly that this money has been transferred from the utility fund back into the general fund for the utility employees. However, since we've had to close that account, we're going to be off for 2 months, the months of June and July. For the months of June and July, it won't properly reflect the payroll account because the utility account's closed. So it's all being taken out of the general fund still, but normally the utility fund transfers their employees' payroll to the general fund. You're not going to have that because of the fraud. I just want to make sure that you know that the numbers are going to be off a little bit. They'll be reconciled eventually, but it's all being taken out of one fund now, at the recommendation of the auditor and the bank.
Hmm. Okay, so noted, and let's see if there's anything else. Okay, so anticipated budget for next year for utilities for 802.
Anticipated budget?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And again, we still have some trimming to do on this because we're a little bit out of balance between revenue and expenditures.
Yeah. Yeah, because right now, what about 100 or 200,000 approximately to the negative? Yeah, we got to do some tweaking. At 4802.
Now, some of that may get cured when we look at the salary numbers and, you know, they could be adjusted down and whatnot. Also, if we look at the rates and we decide on at least on the commercial side, an increase there, that could balance some of that out. But certainly the easiest path is to trim from some of the line items. And, you know, to that end, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'll call your attention to line number 32 again. And just kind of pose the question, is this something that we want to leave in there? That number is at 50,000 proposed. We had a number of 3,000 for this current year, which hasn't been used.
Mm-hmm. Okay. There are probably a few lines that we're going to have to look at, particularly if indeed we're anticipating that our insurance, the increase in the insurance, and this is on both accounts, is going to be around that. And I know sometimes it hit at about 20%. Sometimes we've been very fortunate. If this is not one of those fortunate years, then we're going to have to look at a whole lot of items. And I'll just say for the record, salaries as well. Okay. All right, so we'll take a look and see exactly what the negative is. Thus far, we got the 48.
You could increase this one.
Oh,
Yeah. You'll balance. I didn't see that before.
What is it?
Continue.
okay. Okay. So just in terms of what we have here, the numbers we have, and of course, these are all tentative because we're just kind of massaging the budget as we go along. So as we stand right now, what we have in front of us, we have a $95,590 deficit. Okay. And that's revenue to expenses. Yeah, so we got to try and find that somewhere. Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I do have a question on line 39.
Okay, Vice Mayor has a question. Go right ahead.
This chair is so just, it's too low. Line 39,
Okay.
it was budgeted even last year at 750,000, only 64,000 spent. Is this just a general cushion figure, or what is it?
No, ma'am. So that represents the septic sewer project, which we have not begun. That 64,000, I'm guessing, and I can clarify this, but I think some of that may include some engineering fees or some expenses getting ready for that. It would be anticipated our septic to sewer project is 1.5 million, so the 750 is half of that. So we think that will take 2 fiscal years to complete. It's in this year's budget, but it just didn't work out where, it got off the ground. It still could, but probably looking at half of it being done next fiscal year.
Okay. Sure. Any other questions or comments? If not, our challenge, of course, beginning with administration, is to find the 95,000, almost 96,000 deficit, and how we're going to sort of bridge that gap. Okay. All right, Ken?
So we're ready to look at general fund? Okay. So last week, I probably didn't do a great job, but I kind of hinted around at the idea that this top item under revenue, ad valorem property taxes, last week we had it listed as $3,300,000, and I sort of dropped the suggestion that that's probably low, and as it works out, that is low. So our actual number is going to be more like $3,600,000. Now, that represents 95% of the total ad valorem taxes that are expected to come in. You can budget as low as 95%, but you do have to budget 95%. So that's why that number was increased. And just to give you the bottom line on this, we have the opposite situation in the general fund that we did on the utility fund, where on the general fund side we have overage of money left over after we calculate all the expenditures. I will highlight something, though, on that top line, ad valorem property taxes. If you see the actual amount that's been collected to date, and this is through July 2nd, that number exceeds what we had budgeted. So, we're doing pretty well there. So, is it possible that we could even exceed the $3,600,000 if that remains the amount? We possibly could. But $3,600,000, that represents 95% of what the property appraiser has estimated that we will be bringing in. Your DR 420, I believe it is. The rest of the revenue numbers, and I don't mind saying this again, these are very conservative. Managers throughout time have always said, the best rule of thumb for your budget is estimate low on revenues and estimate high on expenditures. We've definitely done that with the revenues. So some of these items, if you look at line number 3700, waste management, that 108, as of yesterday, that increased. We didn't plug it in here because we haven't seen it hit the bank account yet, but that number increased by 35,000, which puts us over what we estimated, and we still have 1/4 of collections to go. So that's just giving an example of, how these are estimated and how they're conserved. A lot of these line items, we still don't know what they are, what they're going to be, because the state sends us that information. They have not sent that yet. I don't think it's available online. So we're still kind of doing some guesswork, but again, that's estimated low. So and I think last week the concern was these numbers had not been filled in. These are pretty much up to date.
Question? Line 14,100, no, 300 MP utility tax.
The MP utilities,
The
right.
utilities, yeah, it's very low than the actual amount.
Yeah, I just don't think we have moved that money over there like it should be. We're still running behind on some things because of the bookkeeper situation, but I'm very confident that's going to balance out. That 34,000, that's a safe number.
Yeah, I see budgeted, but it's talking about the amount that is actually received. You only received 2,000 of that, 2,900.
Sherry, you want to take that one
What
on
number is
the
it?
utility tax?
So that's based on state statutes. Our ordinance says that you can get 10%, even though you own the utility company, of your water bill only. So if your water bill uses 10,000 gallons of water, you've got $2.10.
Yes.
10 plus the base rate of $12.65, it would be 10% of that only on
My,
the sewer.
my question is, what is the actual amount compared to the budget amount? The actual amount received is only 2,900?
If your budgeted amount is 29,000, you get 10%. So, can you see this? Utility tax, that's what you've gotten to date. You're expected to get 34,000 of $340,000. So if you look at your utility rate
Mm-mm.
for your water revenue, where is it? Where's water? Right here. So your budgeted amount would be $2,600 or $26,586. For this one, it would be $34,845.
So we've only received 2,900
You
of
haven't,
that.
you've gotten more than that, but your
Oh.
revenue's not up to date. With the utility, did I give you this? With the utility rate, with the utility software, it's the only program that doesn't automatically transfer into accounting. All of your other programs talk to accounting immediately. Utility is a manual transfer because when there are adjustments that need to be made with utility bills, they have to be done by the 15th through the 17th of the month, and then a button is hit manually to transfer the information to accounting. It doesn't automatically go over, like when we cut checks for vendor payments or when we do payroll. That's automatic, or when you take in money at the front counter, that's automatic. But utility payments are not automatic in the system, so it requires that you manually do it. We've worked without a bookkeeper for a while, that's why it's behind.
Just hasn't caught up with itself yet.
Sorry?
Just hasn't caught up with itself yet.
Right.
The number is a good number, but it's just not caught up yet.
I gave them the DR 420 so that they could follow with what you're talking about. On line 18 and 25 is usually where it is. But he was telling you about what the state statute says with your ad valorem taxes. You cannot budget less than 95%, like he said, and you can't go over 99%. So the town has always budgeted between 95 and 97%.
Yeah.
And don't forget, sometimes people don't pay their taxes on time, as in businesses and residents. So that money is delayed revenue. And then some of them pay it early, which is deferred revenue. But now the county has it where you can't pay early. You can't pay your taxes before November. And then some of that is also a discounted tax payment. If you pay in November, remember you get 4% off. If you pay in December, 3%,
Yeah.
you pay in January 2, and in February 1, and then after that, it's nothing.
Yeah, I
But
was
on
just concerned.
housing taxes, that's not a big deal. But on commercial taxes, the 4% can be a big deal.
So this line is about MP utility tax?
No, you're talking about the DR 420 or the?
No, I'm talking, my question was about the,
I know, I thought we answered that already.
oh, okay.
Your utility tax is 10% of your water revenue.
It's just not up to date, simply put.
Before it can be transferred, it has to be reviewed and make sure that the numbers are correct. You can't, it's not like you have to correct the numbers, but you have to do it month by month.
And like Sherry said, it has to be done manually, and most of your general fund revenue, it comes in, boom, it's there. It's in the general fund. This is actually moved over, calculated based on what you're receiving from your utility fund. So that's why it's a little bit slower in catching up. Plus, we've been a little bit short-staffed on the bookkeeping end, so I don't feel like there's an adjustment needed in the projection. I still think that could turn out to be a little bit low.
What about business tax Palm Beach?
Business tax, Palm Beach.
300.
Anybody that owns a business in the town of Bengonia Park, the county requires that you also have a county license. So when they register here, then of course they have to register with the county, and or they register with the county and they didn't register here. The county sends you a portion of that revenue.
Okay, because we,
2%.
I don't know how it's broken down.
the
Probably.
budget was for 1,500, we received 11,300, so it's just wondering, but the budget is not reflecting that amount for the next budget.
Collected so much more than we budgeted. And again, the projections in all cases are, very conservative. We just happen to have a very good year. Some of these may be delinquents that the county was able to collect or collect from us. So we just happen to have a good year, but it is conservative.
Or you have, Cerise Partnership is an example. They have 5 buildings in the town of Bengonia Park, and they sold 4 of them. So those are new businesses that have come in, a new company. Anytime that you buy a building here and you rent it out to other businesses, like if Councilmember McConnell opens up a welding company, the mayor opens up a healthcare agency, you open up a social justice reform, and Councilmember Davis opens up a feeding program, you guys have to have licenses for that. So now Ken Metcalf is the new owner of the building. He has to pay an unclassified business tax receipt, and that's like $221.63. So anytime, we've had a lot of companies purchase buildings now from owners that were here for years, and now they've either retired, moved on, etc., or sold off portions of their property. That's where you'll get more county tax revenue and business tax revenue and delinquent revenue.
And Vice Mayor, on that same note, just the line item above that, you'll see that for Mangonia Park, we've collected currently about 28,000 more than what we projected. So it works on both ends.
We have staff here that's actually, they've been directed to do the BTRs in a timely manner and go after them. And we haven't even gone to code board hearing on any of them yet. This is just making sure it comes in. For the town's taxes, though, we've collected a lot through the lien search process. So.
And I will say our process for collecting BTRs is a lot smoother now. It's improved a lot. We have very engaged employees, and beefing up code enforcement hasn't hurt, for sure.
Okay. Anything else? Questions, comments? Okay. Any other questions or comments? Okay. Ken, you have anything else?
So going to the expenditure side, you're going to find not a lot of numbers have changed since last week. On page 2, legislative, that's exactly the same as it was last week. We're showing about a $100 increase overall. I would point out this, and the clerk brought this to my attention today. We had a really good afternoon meeting on some of these numbers today. Now would be the time on your training, travel, all of that, any travel you're planning on doing, you want to identify that now, since we're talking about budget. And I'm going to say now, I don't mean tonight, but just give us an idea of what you're thinking as far as your conferences, your travel and whatnot. You see that we are a little bit over this year on that. So, but as far as the legislative department, that's pretty much intact. The administration department, that does, and I should have pointed this out on the utility fund as well. We still have in here a 5% increase for full-time employees, and of course we do have in here the increases in the insurances by 25%. I would point to, on page 3, near the top, account 319, professional services. That's your line item that you have your funding for the lobbyist. So just to, not beating a dead horse, I hope, but just to bring that up again. And also included in that is a feasibility study for a potential community redevelopment agency. And that would most likely be performed by either our planners or by Treasure Coast. Okay? Line item 340, contract services. This item, you have your, anything from your exterminator to your IT people to in your janitorial services. This particular increase is reflective of an increase in potential service agreements for cameras. We're going to be bringing that to you at the next council meeting, Captain Thomas and I, with some recommendations on cameras. The cameras, the purchase is a one-time expense, but the annual agreements or whatnot is included in here also. Account number 550, Property Enhancement Grant Program. We do have $100,000 there. Of course, that's going to be based on any amount that we can bring in for that. It's been presented as a grant program largely for senior citizens to make home repairs or property improvements. So that's what that is. And then on the police department, the highlighted area that is showing a 2% increase that we spoke about last week. Fire services, line or account 340, that shows the 5% increase that's built into your agreement with the City of West Palm Beach.
You said police department, you have the increase in there?
Yes. Yes, ma'am. It should.
The same amount for two budgets, who proposed the same amount?
I'm sorry, I didn't.
It's the same amount between the proposed budget and the approved budget.
That's about 30-something thousand.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, that needs to be corrected, but the highlighted area is the increase. The contracted, that's correct. That should have been increased along with the bottom line for that. That's correct. Or I should say, it's incorrect. You are correct. It should have been that times 2.5%, but this number is correct down here. So. If you would look at page 4 on the back side of that, account number 500, This is under your building department, which also has some code expenses in there as well. Account number 500, lot clearing and abatement. There's 50,000 in there if council wants to have staff pursue any large-scale abatement projects. So that's probably a conservative number if we go after large properties in that. So I just wanted to point that out. Public Works,
I know one large property that needs to be done. I know one large property that needs to be done. I agree. You know what I'm saying?
I don't think 50,000 will cover that.
No, we need about triple that, quadruple that.
More than that,
More than that?
over $1 million.
Just to clean the lot, we need $1 million?
Okay.
so on some of these abatement projects, not speaking directly to any one property, but the attorney would be overseeing a lot of that, and there'll be quite a bit of advice given to staff prior to doing anything like that. But I did want to, this comes up from year to year, and just make sure there was something in there for you to consider.
Okay.
Public Works, of course, the salary line item reflects a increase for 3 full-time employees, and it also reflects the insurance increases as well. Everything else is, for the most part, the same. Under 466 NPDES, this is basically your stormwater drain cleaning. That's been at 40,000 for some time. We didn't do any this year. We're going to ask for 50,000 for next year because we anticipate that amount going up. And that is something that the civil engineer supervises directly once it's funded. And to that point, there's 3 areas that we do that drain cleaning, if you will. Hill Avenue being a major part of it, 53rd Street. Under, on page 5, miscellaneous, 225,000 put in there for potential natural disaster emergency type situations. Luckily, we haven't had to spend any this year, but that is a good amount of money to have in there just in case the unthinkable or what we hope doesn't happen happens. It'd be good to have that so you know exactly what line item you're spending from, and you can, I say this like this, in real time, keep up with your expenditures. And a lot of times during a situation like that, it's kind of hard to do that. And we do have 45,000 in there for a new public works truck. And like Sherry and I were talking about today, we have 45,000 in this year's budget. If we get another 45, this may come together at the same time where we want to buy 2 at the same time instead of 1 and then another one. We might be able to get a better deal that way. Street maintenance, the only thing I would highlight, we have a project set for this year, the Mangonia Hills paving project. Those bids should be completed. The deadline is this week, Thursday afternoon, so this should be getting underway. That's the 190 that you see approved, and we've put an additional 150,000 in for next year. That's going to be mostly industrial streets, 50th Street, 52nd, Mangonia Drive, Foster Road, some of those in the East Avenue, a lot of that in the industrial area that are in what we would consider to be poor shape.
Question, on 432 street lights, FPL. There was nothing spent for this budget. Are we gonna project to spend some before the end of this fiscal year?
So what we're thinking has happened, and this goes back, way back to the earlier the year, when these bills come in, we feel like they got paid out of one line item instead of being broken out into the different street light line items. So this one, in essence, should have some funding come out of it. And I say street lights, I mean electricity line items. Yes, we've paid handsomely to FPL this year.
Okay. Anything else, Vice Mayor?
I'm really not clear on
Okay. Need some clarification?
that. Yes,
Okay. Go right ahead.
I'm trying to understand, street lights is referring to what again? Is this a revenue listing or is this a
Street lights,
432, street lights? Is that a revenue listing or is that an expenditure listing?
that's expenditures.
So we're not gonna do any project on that. The new lights that we want, that's not happening before the end of fiscal year. The new street lights we've been talking about, none of that's gonna happen before the end of fiscal year?
We're putting in new street lights, especially in Mangonia Hills.
Okay.
Correct.
So is that saying that this 37 will be spent before the end of the fiscal year is my question?
I would say the large majority of it would be. Once
Okay.
we kind of balance out, like I said, when we get a bill from FPL, it's an automatic, and I shouldn't say automatic, but it is a, how would you describe that? It's a ACH kind of payment, and I think it was drawn exclusively from one expenditure account instead of being broken up into several. So this particular line item hasn't been hit, but that will balance out. And yes, I think quite a bit of that 37 has, in reality, been spent. Maybe not on paper, but it has been.
It's just not recorded as amount spent is not actually recorded yet. There's nothing in the space where it says amount.
Again, when FPL sends in a bill, this has probably been getting paid out of a different line item than what it should have.
Yeah.
We haven't, so I think you'll find when all's said and done that there will be money coming out of that line item.
Okay, I remember some talk, I thought it was last week, that street lights would be going up somewhere.
Mangonia Hills,
And where is that reflecting in our budget?
that would be in the street lights. All you're paying for, unless we go with decorative lamp post, is just a basic lamp and wood pole. Those don't cost anything except for the service.
Question. Didn't we approve for the decorative lights to come? Didn't we all agree on the decorative lights?
We talked about it, there was never a
Oh,
definitive on that. Right. We just talked about additional lights. We did have conversation on decorative lights, but it was very preliminary. It didn't get down to, we had the young lady from FPL come out and talk
Correct.
about it a little bit, but that's about as far as it went.
I thought we had asked for some type of a feedback on some questions we had as far as pricing goes,
Correct.
so that we can move forward with this. And this,
We never talked about moving forward per se. Now, we did bring back information. I can have her back if that's the desire of council.
but the prices that we asked for, I don't remember getting those details? Maybe it happened when I wasn't here?
So the prices are based on all of the engineering cost, and the only way to determine that is to determine exactly where you want the lights at, the decorative street lights, and then they have to measure off everything, and it's calculated from that.
Right.
Okay, so we talked last week about 4 or 8 street lights going up in Hill section.
Correct.
I'm just trying to picture, where is that reflected here?
It would be reflected in the line item, the street lights line item.
Okay, but that has not been expended at this point, is that what you're saying?
Not out of that line item, that's correct.
So, what are you saying? It has been expended, just not out of this line item?
That's right.
Can you tell me where? Because I'm trying to figure out the 37,000 from the budget that we're finishing this year. Is that going to be spent? That's what I'm trying to understand, where is that shown, so I can understand, because it shows nothing on this.
Okay, let me, if you will, allow me this week to get that information. I'll send it out like I did last week with the manager's report.
I have another question.
Just before, I'll get right to you.
Yes, sir.
Just before you're done, is that sufficient?
Just
or-
trying to get clarity, that's all, yeah.
I can clarify it, but I don't have that information.
Okay, well, this is what I just want to understand, because if we talked about it last week and it's going to be done, I just wanted to know where is it being reflected? That's
It will be out of that line item,
Okay,
the
Okay.
432.
okay.
I think we, maybe I misunderstood. When the lady came out, we had all agreed that she would come back so we could get the lights measured out. I know you guys have, really did well on lighting up 45th Street, but the decorative lights, what we want to do is make the town beautiful. So when we sit in different conferences, we can call it bold and beautiful. And right now, it need work. We really would like to have the lighting, Hill section, yes, and also on Australia and 45th Street. It'll be nice to have, if we have this in the budget, as I thought we had agreed on. I thought the lady was coming back. I thought we really had already agreed on doing this. So apparently
No, we did
didn't.
not.
So we didn't get there. So is she going to be coming back?
We can have her back if that's,
Yeah, because we don't just want her to come back. We want to get the work done. You know, I'm a person who want to execute. You know, I did call FNL about that light. They said they'll be.
oh, thank you, I appreciate it. It's
Uh,
still
yeah.
there, but thank
No,
you.
they said 30 days. They'll be out within 30 days. And I did let them know that you had been pushing.
I appreciate that.
And
Thank you.
I do keep my word. So I did call them. I was like, this is ridiculous, this pole. I mean, any other area, you wouldn't allow a pole to be leaning like that on a major highway. So I did say my town manager has, to no avail, been emailing and whatever to get this pole, just take it down. I mean, it's ridiculous. And so I did make that aware, and I told him that. So I'm going to be calling him. If I got to call Channel 12 to get that pole moved, we're going to move that pole. That's ridiculous. I've never seen that anybody town on a major highway, and you just leave it sitting there. So anyway, I just wanted to let the record know that I did do that. I kept my word. But we would like to have this town beautiful. It needs work, and we are agreeing on a lot of projects, like I was saying. And you guys doing a great job. No offense, but we really need to get some things executed as far as, you know, the pavements, the different things need to be done. It's really not hard work to do. Once you get it done, they say, well, do it right the first time, you don't have to do it over again. We can just get it moving, you know, especially the lighting. We can get Lady back from FNL and go ahead and set some dates and times and get things, you know, executed. That would be great. I'm just not just talking about and agreeing on it and moving to the next item.
So, Mr. Mayor, if I may, I'll have, her name's Gladys, I'll have her come back and we'll talk about decorative street lighting. But just for clarification, the main purpose of her coming out originally was to present to town council the idea of the conversion.
Correct.
You know, the LED conversion, which council voted to do, and most of that has taken place. So, but I will have her back.
Okay, Councilwoman Davis, anything else?
No, thank you.
Okay. All righty. Along those lines, I know that we did get some information. If we still have that, I don't know if we have electronic versions of it.
We do.
If we can get that back out to
Absolutely.
council members, and that way we can take a look at it again and see what those pricings were for different things.
Sure thing.
Okay. All right. Anything else?
No, thank you. Thank
Okay.
you, Mr.
Any other
McCall.
questions? Okay. Any other questions or comments? And my apologies, I was just kind of going through some things while affording you the opportunity to ask any questions you had. Okay. All righty. Anything else, Ken, before I get to just a few comments I have? McConnell? I'm sorry.
Will she need to know where we want them and how many? So we need to figure out where before she comes,
Mhm.
we need to figure out where we want the lights and how many.
And of course, that could be dictated by cost. So why don't we do this? Let's have her come out, field some questions again. I will send the information back out. Have her field some questions. And then based on that, we can start to nail down where we would like decorative lighting. But yeah, I mean, eventually that's going to have to be nailed down.
So I guess we need to have an idea because that's what's gonna drive the cost.
Right.
How many lights we're gonna put up, correct?
I would think so. Right. But I did hear something about Australian, the hill section, maybe even 45th Street. I mean, we can jot down some ideas and have that ready for her when she comes. And, you know, and I think she'll ask also, do we want to replace poles that are there now, or do we just want to add to? So, again, to your point, we'll have to know how many eventually and where at.
And anything else? Because I think in terms of just the general discussion that we had in terms of, I guess, the canopy or whatever they call it, that area in which the light will actually be effective, provide effective lighting. If I'm not mistaken, I think, for instance, just as an example, to go down Australian, and I try and have some physical relationship to it, to other cities that have done it. And those poles are probably, help me out with measurements, McConnell, probably 50 feet apart.
Yeah.
Right, so you kind of consider, ooh, geez, that's like a half a mile stretch. At 50, yeah, that's a lot of money. Yeah, in order for it to be effective, and we want it to just be cosmetic, then we can have it 200 feet apart, right, and spend less money because we're buying less poles and lights. But it's going to be expensive. If I'm not mistaken, I think each pole was like $1,200 or something like that with the fixtures and everything else. So just my best educated guess, just Australian itself, if we were to be as frugal as we can while still being effective with lighting, would be what, about 20 poles?
Easy.
About 20 poles times 11, what is that?
The other thing you gotta realize, these LED lights they're putting up, they put 2 up on Mangonia Drive and we're 46th Street. And they don't cover a wide, they're more like a spotlight than they are, you know, they don't cover a big area. Now the other ones that they done away with, you know, they lit up a large area. But these LED lights are nothing like the old ones.
Mhm.
And they're doing the same thing at the airport. They're putting all LED lights up, and they're the same. When you go down there at night, you know, it's like a spotlight, and in between it's better than being no light, but it's not like the old, I forget what they call them, not the old lights that they're replacing.
Mhm.
I mean, I'm sure FP&L knows, they got a reason for replacing them. Number one is they don't burn as much electricity. So that's probably what drives that, why they're changing all of them.
Mhm. Yeah. And in fact, when we had the gentleman here before, and he was talking about the difference between the LEDs and the old sulfur bulbs and all of that,
Yeah.
and yeah, it burns a whole lot more that we still use in our homes and everything. But so again, just an educated guess, if we were to, that's about 220,000 to go down Australian. And again, this is not anything scientific or mathematical, other than a educated guess that if it took 20 poles to go from our boundary all the way down to 45th Street, 20 poles at about $1,100 a piece, it's about $220,000. Yeah, so it gets a little expensive. But still,
And
once we get the hard numbers, we'll take a look at the exact numbers.
And that's just poles. Now you gotta get power to them.
Yeah. I'm not sure if that was and actually, help me out with my memory. I'm not sure if what we saw in terms of the poles was that included the cost of install.
I
I'm
was
not sure.
thinking it did. I think we asked that question.
Well, once we get that information back to us, then we'll be able to, because I think it was attached to some of that information she gave us.
We'll send the information back out. And
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I can clarify something, because I don't want anyone leaving here tonight thinking that a directive was given to the manager that I didn't follow up on. And that can happen. Things can fall through the cracks. We had a workshop back in November where we talked about beautification, we talked about placement of cameras and speed bumps. And on the beautification, we did talk about street lighting, okay? And we can all go back and watch it if it's online. The conclusion was that we would concentrate, at least for now, until this part of it was finished, on the plantings. We would get plantings done on 45th and Australian, and that was the extent of it. We didn't close the door on street lighting, but that was where the priority was, and I feel like I'm pretty safe in saying that. So.
Ready? So with that, and we did budget, I think did we budget for the islands, the medians?
Yes.
We did budget for that in this fiscal year?
Yes, sir. We budgeted 65,000.
Okay. Where are we with getting it done? Because what we don't want to do is try and carry over. We want to try and get it.
No,
expected.
we're going to be able to do that. At your next council meeting, finally, we have the updated scope. We had presented one or two versions. We decided to tweak the scope of it a bit. The gentleman that's doing the design, he's done that. It's ready to have you decide on that. So,
Okay.
very close. If you remember, we had, on the original scope, we had two proposals that we brought to you, and in that discussion, it was decided, and the main thing about that discussion was to do away with the flowers and just have more colorful type plants that would be more hardy, and you wouldn't have to switch out every season.
Okay. All righty. I did have another question. Account 340, contracted services. We go back to page 3. Just a quick question. And again, this is all just tentative budgeting. And where we have the 70,000, does this include, because remember we talked about the robocalling system as well? Well, so two questions. Is it inclusive in this amount as well, or?
I apologize, Mayor, what line
I
item?
remember that's on page 3, 340, contracted services.
Yes, sir, the texting program. That's correct.
Is that included in here as well?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And also, if you could bring us an update in terms of where we are with that as
Right,
well.
so that came up last week at the workshop, so we went back. We have re-engaged with the company. We're getting our account straightened out. We're getting them a payment. And, staff has made arrangements to get that going. We just had to iron out who the users would be from an administrative standpoint, and we had to get some payments to them.
Okay, and that's been done, the payments?
That's on the verge of being done. In fact, Cassie was speaking to me today about where we were at. They're looking for a payment of $199, and that should be the extent of it as far as getting started.
All righty, and that'll go out tomorrow. I thought you were gonna say $199,000.
Oh, no.
Right, I mean, $192.99, we can send that out right away.
Well, but that is a monthly fee.
Yes.
So,
Because we want to try and get a lot of these things to Councilwoman Davis's point, that we budgeted for this fiscal year to get it done in this fiscal year, so we don't have any carryover to be considered. Okay. There was something else as well, but I'll defer if there's any other questions or comments.
No, I don't have any.
You have anything else, Ken? Or
no, sir,
administration?
those are pretty much the highlights. If there's more questions, we can,
Okay. Just as we go through the budget and we're considering all things, right? The mayor's not a Grinch or trying to steal anybody Christmas or anything like that. What I try and do, and it's just my method, madness or not, I just try and go inside and work my way out. And looking at that, the short of it all is that when you look at where we are, in terms of just what we have in front of us right now, I know it's subject to tweak and everything else, we're anticipating income of 526,430, expenses 4,982,366, which means that $282,000, if all of this holds true, is what we will put in the bank, right, this coming fiscal year. If everything we have in front of us today holds true. However, if you were to look at what the actual rate of increase in expenses every year, it's way more than this. So eventually, if things continue, we're going to start eating into our revenues, into our savings. And we've been there before. We don't want to do that. And so whenever the mayor says, hey, I guess not just my recommendation, we need sort of tweaking here, kind of consider that. It may be distasteful and uncomfortable, but I remember, and not to go way back in history when we were borrowing money to make payroll, right? And we don't ever want to get back there again. So again, I always say budget with your mind, not with your heart. Okay. So with that, that's all I got for now. Mhm.
That was great what you just said. So I see different monies, like the park with the new fencing, some of that money probably can be shifted on the lighting, because that's a lot, on line 600.
Okay.
For-
We can go there real quick, line
Yeah, I think you
600,
can kinda
because
shift
if it's,
things around. Yeah, both budgets.
you hear that, Ken?
I
And what
heard
we'll do is
part
just
of
make
it. I
sure it's
heard-
not-
600, we probably can use some of that money to shift over to the lighting. That's a proposed budget.
you absolutely could. You're talking about for this fiscal year,
Correct.
what hasn't been spent this year? You could do that, certainly.
That's just in there. So different money can be shifted if you really go over these pages, if need be, for, the beautification and the lighting.
She's talking about moving.
Okay,
Capital outlay.
right, and to Councilwoman Davis's point, for what we've budgeted and have not spent, it's always one of those things, because I know that, and I'm sure each of us probably have sat on community groups and so forth, and they have this term they call a sweep. Don't spend it, we're going to sweep it away. Well, that doesn't happen here, thank goodness. But you want to try and spend money within that budgeted year, right, so that you go into the next one with clean books.
Yeah, that was my point, was about the lighting. We've got
Right.
a budget and let's spend it.
Okay, all righty. Anything else? Any other questions or comments?
Oh, I'm good.
Okay. Ken, your administration have anything else?
No, just if we could get some traction on the lobbyist and any feedback that we could get as far as the comfort level in regard to utility rates. Certainly, I mean, we have workshops ahead of us, but anything that we could nail down and move on to would be appreciated.
Okay, that will do. One of the things too, and not necessarily for tonight, and I won't claim it as my brainchild or anything else, but we talked for years now about doing something for our seniors, and then, of course, we created this line item and so forth, but perhaps a better conversation offline, but the 100,000, are we, is this an anticipation of private contributions, this
It
100,000?
would have to be.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
And we have no sources identified, but it would have to be private.
Correct. Okay, all
But
righty.
that private could be, just to take that a step further, once and if you vote to do a community redevelopment agency, funds generated from that could be applied to that as well.
Okay, all righty, thanks, I appreciate it, just need some clarity, because it would have solicited something else if not. Okay. Righty, any other questions or comments? Okay, all righty, and nothing else from administration?
No, sir. Good conversation. I appreciate it.
Okay, absolutely. Okay, so we do have this, and then we got that other information coming, so we'll continue to chew this up and dice it, slice it, and then at the next meeting, we'll be able to move it that much further ahead. So with that, if there's nothing else, a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
That's been moved, it's a
Second.
properly seconded, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
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 Opposed,